I just sat here for 35 seconds trying to come up with a clever, smart, interesting, funny open to the show, and I couldn't come up with anything. I legit sat here in 35 seconds for silence, and I finally thought to myself, there's nothing better than winning. It's all about winning. And maybe there's actually been a shift in what mode we're in now going forward for the Cincinnati Bengals. Let's talk about it. Hi, hello, and welcome in to episode number 164 of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. My name is Austin Elmore. Thank you for being here, and thank you for listening. Hope you had a happy Thanksgiving. Hope you're grateful for a lot of different things in life. I know I'm grateful for what I witnessed on Thanksgiving night. That was a Bengals victory, 32-14 over the Baltimore Ravens in the return of one Joe Burrow to the Bengals starting lineup. There's a lot to get to and a lot of fun stuff that happened on Thanksgiving night. We'll talk about that. You'll hear for about 30 seconds or so what Joe Burrow had to say in an emotional moment post-game to Melissa Stark while his team was going all in on turducken surrounding him in Baltimore. You'll also hear from Zach Taylor what he said on Monday before the Bengals go to Buffalo about a certain Bengal who's still not available to play. There's been a lot going on. It's been a great weekend, and I'm glad that I finally get a chance to talk about it. It feels like it's been forever since I had a chance to sit down and record a podcast, but I'll tell you what, anytime Ohio State beats Michigan and Cincinnati wins on the same weekend, the Bengals, that is, it's a great weekend. And it used to happen semi-frequently, and then for the last few years, hasn't happened all that much with Ohio State beating Michigan and the Bengals winning in the same weekend. But you get that elusive 2-0 to start this week, and I'm fired up about that. So let's get into it. The game itself, it's been talked about. We're almost a week after the game, so I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on what happened and what didn't happen. I just think it was a really good sign that the Bengals did not have any fear in putting Joe Burrow in adverse situations, and they really kind of threw him into the deep end. They trusted what he said, that he was ready, and they gave him plenty of opportunities to get off of the to get back into rhythm, I guess is the best way to say it. To shake off the rust was probably the word that I'm looking for. If you think about it, they went under center pretty frequently in the first two drives. Altogether, I think 23% of their snaps came from under center, which is a little bit fewer than what we would see and what we have seen for the season total. But with a toe injury and being down underneath the center and all those linemen around there, that was way more than I expected. Just because of all the different things that could go wrong with pushing off of that foot, with getting stepped on, all those different aspects, I don't think the Bengals were going to go. I didn't think the Bengals were going to go under center very often, and they did roughly 23% of the time. That tells me the Bengals are not afraid of the way Joe Burrow feels. They also got him out and moving. First play of the game was a play action, rollout, short completion. They were not afraid to move the pocket for Joe. Joe was not afraid to move to his right a little bit. There were no ill effects whatsoever of the toe injury. And he threw it 32 times in the first half. Now, I don't love that, especially when you've had an offense that has been as good as it has running the football as of late. But I do think a lot of those passes were things that Joe Burrow checked to at the line of scrimmage. I think it would be a fascinating conversation to hear from Joe and Zach about how often does Joe check from a run to a pass at the line of scrimmage. There's a lot of different audibles and things that can happen, looks or reads or tells or formations that the defense can present to a quarterback that will determine what his next move is. And Joe has full authority at the line of scrimmage to call whatever play he wants and change whatever he wants. That was another good thing on Thursday to see. Another good sign was that he had complete command and complete control of the offense, and he didn't hesitate whatsoever to make those changes and those checks at the line of scrimmage. I think that's part of the reason why his numbers were so inflated throwing the football. Baltimore, I think their plan was, let's test this guy out. Let's see what his toe really feels like. Let's see if he can still beat us. And Joe, by his standards, wasn't great in the first half. I think it's fair to say he had some rust. There was a couple of plays in which he just simply didn't make the throw that we're typically used to seeing him make, and especially passes to Jamar Chase, one down the sideline, one on a quick little hook or curl that they didn't connect on. We're typically used to seeing Joe and Jamar connect on those, and Joe said after the game didn't feel like he was really his best version of himself in that first half. Said he had a little bit of happy feet, understandably so, and obviously his inaccuracy was there. But he really did get into a rhythm. Even if he wasn't completing his passes right away, you could tell that Burrow was in a rhythm with his timing. He was in a rhythm with the offensive line, and I think he did a great job of navigating the pocket, not bailing out on it too much, not just immediately going down to a check down, keeping his eyes downfield. When we've seen Burrow play early in the season sometimes, and often coming off of injuries in the past, he doesn't look like his same self. He will kind of get that happy feet, check the ball down, just get rid of it and move on. I saw Joe Burrow that kept his eyes up, kept his eyes down the field, and wasn't afraid to take those deep shots. And that is a really good sign if you're a Bengals fan, because of Joe Burrow's just flat-out ability to play the quarterback position. He's as good as anybody in the National Football League. In the second half, more of a rhythm, more like Joe. Had a great touchdown pass to Tanner Hudson, great touchdown pass to Andrei Iosivas. It was in that moment where Joe said he felt like he was all the way back. And if you go back and look at that play, adjusted the protection, stepped up in the pocket, Samaje Perine takes on a blocker, and Joe had one of those layered passes over the linebacker in front of the safety, right into the arms of Andrei Iosivas. That is elite quarterback play that not every quarterback in the NFL can do. The other thing was he dropped back the pass 46 times in the game. Again, a number that I think is a little too high, but 46 times he dropped back the pass. He was sacked once. Now, Baltimore it's been one of their big issues, one of their bugaboos for you, if you will, this year. They haven't been able to rush the passer as consistently as they hoped, and they haven't been able to get as much or as many sacks as they would like to see for their young defense. And so because of that, the Bengals' offensive line, I think, performed really well. Just one sack in those dropbacks. He was rarely pressured. He rarely had to leave the pocket. He was able to establish that timing and kind of get things going. So kudos to the Bengals' offensive line. Kudos to Zach Taylor and the Bengals not coming up with some, limited, scaled-back version of the playbook to try to protect Joe Burrow. He said he trusts Joe. The way that game was played, that game plan that was put out on a short week, all of that tells me the Bengals believe Joe Burrow when he says he's 100%, and they're going to call games like it because they don't have that much time to waste. And the beauty of them winning that game against the Baltimore Ravens is that they actually are alive in the playoff race. I know that's ridiculous. It doesn't sound realistic. I have a hard time believing it myself. I've said on this podcast multiple times that I'm in evaluation mode, and I am still to an extent, but also I'm going to shift from one mode to the other here. I'm in evaluation mode, but I'm also in playoff mode. Because the Bengals, with this schedule coming up, at Buffalo, home against Baltimore, at Miami, home against Arizona, home against Cleveland, there's a real possibility that they could win 5 of those games, all of them, and make the playoffs. There's a real possibility they could win 4 of those games and make the playoffs and win the AFC North at 8-9, especially when you consider the schedules that Baltimore and Pittsburgh have. Baltimore and Pittsburgh play each other twice. Baltimore has to go to Green Bay late in the season. They also have to play the New England Patriots, who, oh, by the way, have won 10 games in a row and are the number 1 seed in the AFC. Pittsburgh has those 2 games against Baltimore. They play the Detroit Lions as well. They play Miami, who's playing much better football at the moment. It is not out of the realm of possibility that the Bengals at 9-8 or at 8-9 find a way to actually make the playoffs and win the AFC North and host a home playoff game. That's absurd, but it does go to the point of just how open and weird and strange this season has been in the AFC North. And I've gone through the playoff predictor on ESPN. I've done it on The Athletic. I've done every possible scenario, the scenarios that I want to happen with the Bengals winning out, the scenarios that might be a little bit more realistic with them losing a game, and the scenario that I really truly think will happen, picking every game, no bias, how's it going to look? And there's a lot of those scenarios that see the Bengals actually making the playoffs. So I think when you look back to where they were a year ago when they were 4-8, they were not in as good of a position as they are right now. That seems crazy to say, but it's true, especially when you consider their schedule compared to the schedules of Baltimore and Pittsburgh. The easiest way would be for the Bengals to win out, Baltimore and Pittsburgh to split, and then each of them to lose one other game, if I'm not mistaken. And after that, and based off those those teams that I told you that they're playing, I don't think that's ridiculous to think. Pittsburgh feels like they're on the verge of an implosion. Lamar Jackson, if you saw him Thursday night, is nothing like the Lamar Jackson we've seen in the past. And it makes me wonder, is he 100%? And are either one of the quarterbacks on those two teams actually able to elevate their squads late in the season like this? I don't know if they are. And I kind of think Joe Burrow might be the one that's best set up to do so, even coming off of that toe surgery that he had just a few weeks ago. And the other part of this, the emergence of the Bengals defense. They are a much better defense than we saw the first part of the season. Over the last 3 games, they have played so much better. Their missed tackle percentage is dropping. Their 3-and-out percentage is dropping. Overall, they've turned into a relatively decent defense over the last 3 weeks. And I'm going to try to pull up the numbers here for you. I had them saved somewhere. But the way that this defense has performed over the last 3 games, all right? Let me see here. All right, here it is. Bengals defensive ranks over the last 3 weeks. Expected points added per play, 15th. Points per drive, 13th. Success percentage, 23rd. Rush success percentage, 11th. Explosive play percentage, still not good, 30th. Red zone, tied for 4th. 3-and-out percentage, 29th, so they're still allowing some first downs. And their turnover margin, tied for 8th. They were opportunistic against the Baltimore Ravens. They forced some turnovers. They were aggressive. They provided incredible effort running down Derrick Henry on a long pass play, running down Isaiah Likely to force a fumble and a touchback, all that stuff. Those numbers are by no means an elite defense, but that's what we've been asking for all year. Can you get to 15 to 22? Can you get in that range somewhere with a lot of those statistics? And if you can, you're going to give your offense 1, 2, 3 more possessions a game. And with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and all the talent that you have on that offense, that should be enough to win you football games. That would have been enough to beat the Jets. That would have been enough to beat the Chicago Bears. That's the point we're trying to make. And if the Bengals had won those 2 games, they'd be sitting pretty right now in the AFC North. But they didn't, so they still have a long way to go. But it is noteworthy that this defense over the last 3 weeks has played much better. And they've done so against opponents that are not awful. Obviously, the Pittsburgh Steelers don't have the best offense, but the Bengals played better. The New England Patriots, one of the better offensive units in the league, the Bengals hung with them. And last night against Baltimore, although Lamar's not 100%, there are still weapons on that team like Derrick Henry, like Isaiah Likely, like Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, and others. This, for the first time, feels like actual progress, actual players moving in the right direction, actual development for the Bengals defense. And that is a good thing. Now, you can't let the last 3 games erase the previous 9 or 10 or whatever it was. There's still a long way for this defense to go, but finally, for the first time, you're seeing development. You're seeing a defensive coordinator that's mixing pieces around in different looks at the line of scrimmage, that's blitzing a little bit more. You've seen Dax Hill move to the outside. You've seen Jalen Davis come out to be the slot corner. You've seen Shamar Stewart head to the injured list, and Miles Murphy and Joseph Osai have played much better football. No doubt about it, this defense is trending in the right direction. Now, it's not going to be easy. They play the Buffalo Bills this week, but I will say this. The Bengals seem to have had the Bills' number in recent years, and the Bills' offense is not what it was or what it has been in the past. It will it will start and stop with James Cook and the Bills running game. Obviously, you'd expect me to say Josh Allen in that situation, but James Cook and the Bills as a whole ran for 249 yards on the Steelers last week. That hasn't happened since before the Steel Curtain. Like Three Rivers Stadium type of days. It's been that long since that sort of thing has happened in Pittsburgh. Buffalo is a run-first team. That trend began last year. It's continuing this year. They're not getting as much production out of the wide receivers as you would expect. Yes, they have Josh Allen. His ability to run is going to be a big part of the game. But the Bengals and Bills have met several times in the Burrow and Allen era, and the Bengals have been the better team each and every time, including that divisional round game in Buffalo in the 2022 playoffs. That would have been January of 23. Then, when you look at the way that these two teams have performed, they're two of the best December and January teams in the NFL since 2021. Buffalo is the best. They are 18-4 in December and January since 2021. The Bengals are tied for third with Kansas City for being 17-6. That's sensational. How about quarterbacks? Best quarterback winning percentage in December and January since 1970. Joe Burrow has the third best record winning percentage-wise at an 813 win percentage. That's 13-3 all time. Josh Allen is 11th. He's 26-10. That's a 722 win percentage. The Bengals are 14-2 in the month of December under head coach Zach Taylor. That is kind of hard to believe, but it's true. This is typically the time of the year where the Bengals turn things around. We've seen it many times in the past. We've seen it already at this end of November going into December, the way they played against the Baltimore Ravens. One of my favorite parts of the game Thursday was Joe Burrow and the Bengals meeting or gathering around the turducken to celebrate Thanksgiving after the game. Can you hear that? Somebody must be stuck in the snow. Anyways, I hope that's not distracting. It's distracting me. Somebody's just burning rubber out here, probably burning up snowflakes trying to get out. Anyways, for the first time that I can really remember, we saw some real emotion from Joe Burrow. We saw it in the post-game interview surrounded by his teammates with Melissa Stark, which you're about to hear. We saw it in the locker room when Zach Taylor gives him a game ball and the camera pans to him and you can see him kind of well up and wipe a tear away. And then in the post-game press conference, he also had that moment of reflection. I think what's cool about it is it's a quarterback who it's a kid, it's a guy who just experienced a dream come true. He's always wanted to play on Thanksgiving. He's wanted to play on a holiday. He's wanted to be in that moment, and he did it. And he won the game, and he won the MVP award, the John Madden MVP award. And after all the stuff that he'd been through and all the things that have been said about him and having to watch the team kind of flounder without him, I think it all kind of caught up to Joe Burrow. Here's Joe in the midst of a flock of teammates surrounding him and the turducken talking to Melissa Stark on NBC on Thanksgiving night.
I've always wanted to play on Thanksgiving night. I'm just most grateful to all the people in my life that helped me through this last 10 weeks. Certainly wasn't easy for me, all the things that I've been through in my career so far. I got people that just want the best for me and work really hard to put me in a great position to go and play well, get back out on the field. Physical therapists, trainers, doctors. I've certainly had my fair share of these, and it's just fun. It's just fun to be back out here with the guys and experiencing this. It's great to be back. Certainly not an easy thing to go through, but this moment makes everything worth it. Good to be back out with the guys experiencing this.
You just don't get that from Joe Burrow very often. That was cool to see multiple times, to see him tear up and kind of let the moment get to him and see it. I thought that was cool from Bengals quarterback Joe Burrow. There is one thing I want to leave you with, and I'm trying to find out more about this. I'm not trying to go overboard about it, but I want to figure out what's going on because it feels like we're missing something. I want to play for you the first 38-ish seconds of Zach Taylor's press conference from Monday with the media. He talks and gives an update on T. Higgins and Taj Brooks. T. Higgins and Taj Brooks both still in concussion protocol. And then he's asked about defensive end Trey Hendrickson. Listen to the way Zach answers those questions, and most notably, the silence at the end.
He's doing good. He's still in protocol. So him and Taj will keep working through that earlier in the week, so we'll see where it ends up.
Is Trey in the mix this week?
He's doubtful this week.
You said doubtful?
Yeah.
I think this will be Trey's 4th game. Was there any consideration to put him on IR?
No, we'll just keep taking it week to week.
Is he still doing all the normal meetings, everything behind the scenes? Is that
Mostly rehab stuff with the trainers.
Do you anticipate getting him back at L this season?
Yeah, we'll just keep taking it week to week.
Zach had this look on his face at the end. This kind of smirk, like exhausted, here we go again type of look on his face as everybody you could hear typing away to post and to tweet and to write that Trey Hendrickson once again would not be playing this week against the Buffalo Bills. Trey has missed 37 games or 37 days now, 5 games, whatever it's going to be. The Bengals didn't put him on IR. If they knew this injury was that severe, they would have put him on IR. I've heard that there are some people in the organization that believe Trey is healthy enough to play. I don't know that for sure, but that's something that I've heard. There is something that we are missing here about Trey. There was another part in there where Zach Taylor said that he's not really in meetings. He's just doing behind-the-scenes work with the trainers. That doesn't add up. None of this adds up. And I feel like we're missing something, and this situation is really weird. I'm fascinated to see how it turns out between now and the end of the season, especially the way the other young edge rushers are performing at this point. That does it for me. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. And if you're a follower of mine on Twitter, thank you very much. I've just went over 7,000 followers on that website. You know, the Elon purchase really stunted my growth, but we're still growing. We're still trying, and we're still going for the moon. If you don't follow me on Twitter, or X as they call it these days, please do so. At Auty Elmore, it's AUTYELMORE. You can find me on all social media with that handle. We'll talk to you again next week. And as always, have fun, be safe, go Bucks.